Have you ever wondered why some people manage to keep their home immaculate despite having 1,000 commitments? I discovered the secret, and it wasn't through any miracle product or complicated method. In fact, it all started when my daughter married a Japanese man and began living in Tokyo. During a 3-month visit to her home, I noticed something that completely changed my life. I am 52 years old, and like many of you, I have always struggled to keep my house in order. 3 children, a husband, a dog, and an active professional life as a math teacher made me believe that having an organized home was a privilege reserved for those with a maid or plenty of free time. What I learned from my daughter-in-law Sakura goes far beyond simple cleaning tips. It is a philosophy of life that the Japanese call small moments, big results. It has nothing to do with that story about folding clothes like an envelope or throwing away everything that doesn't bring joy. It is much deeper and, at the same time, simpler. The first thing that caught my attention was how Sakura never seemed stressed about the house, even while working full-time at a bank. Her apartment, even though it was small like most residences in Tokyo, was always immaculate. But the most interesting part, I never saw her doing massive cleaning sprees or dedicating hours to cleaning. One day, while we were having green tea on the balcony, a daily ritual I have grown to love, I gathered the courage to ask her secret. She smiled and said something that changed my perspective. "Regina-san, we don't clean to have a beautiful home, we clean to respect the space that shelters us. And respect doesn't demand perfection, it demands consistency." That was when she taught me about the sacred 10-minute system, an ancient Japanese technique that has been passed down through her family for generations. Unlike anything I had seen on blogs or TV shows, this method doesn't involve endless lists of tasks or rigid schedules. The principle is simple. Every space has its own energy that needs to flow. When we accumulate disorder, we block that energy. But the most fascinating part is how the Japanese deal with it practically. They don't wait for the house to become a mess before doing a mega clean. Instead, they have developed a system that prevents chaos before it sets in. I remember the day Sakura showed me her 10-minute kit. A small bamboo box with compartments that held only 5 essential items. No expensive products or complex tools. The secret was in the way these items were used and, above all, in the perfect timing of each action. The most incredible part is that, contrary to what many think, you don't need to be a minimalist or live like a monk to have an organized home. I have a 150 square meters house, full of life and memories, and I managed to perfectly adapt the method to our Brazilian reality. The difference now is that every object has a purpose and a specific place. Before sharing the practical details of the method, I must confess something. In the first days, I thought it wouldn't work. How could 10 minutes make a difference in a house the size of mine? But what I discovered surprised me so much that today I can't imagine living any other way. The first secret I learned is that those 10 minutes are not spent cleaning in the traditional way. In fact, it is a ritual divided into 3 specific moments of the day, which Sakura calls power points. These are strategic moments that, when properly utilized, prevent 80% of the mess we normally face from accumulating. The first power point occurs right after waking up, and lasts exactly 3 minutes. But it isn't for making the bed or organizing the room, as many imagine. Instead, I learned to perform what I call the morning energy ritual. While the coffee is brewing, I walk through the house opening all the windows, even in winter, and light a lavender incense in the kitchen. This creates an airflow that, according to the Japanese, removes the stagnant energy of the night. The most interesting thing is that I discovered, by chance, that this simple ritual reduced mold problems at home by 70%. Before, I used to spend a fortune on anti-mold products and dehumidifiers. Now, I rarely have to worry about it. In addition, I noticed that my family naturally began to keep things more organized when the environment is fresh and fragrant early in the morning. The second power point occurs after lunch, and here is one of the biggest secrets I learned. The Japanese never clean the kitchen immediately after meals. That's right, you read correctly. They wait exactly 27 minutes, the time of a short nap, before touching any dishes. Sakura explained to me that this interval allows the fats to naturally detach from the plates, making cleaning much more efficient. During those 27 minutes, I do something that revolutionized my routine, the 5 surfaces circuit. With a microfiber cloth lightly dampened with a mixture of water and 3 drops of tea tree oil, a trick I learned from Sakura, I quickly wipe down the 5 most touched surfaces in the house: doorknobs, remote controls, light switches, faucets, and the stair railing. This simple habit drastically reduced colds and flu at home. My husband, who had always been skeptical about these Japanese things, as he used to say, was impressed when he noticed that he no longer caught those viruses he used to bring home from work. The third PowerPoint is the most surprising, and it happens at 5:43 p.m. Yes, the time is specific for a reason. Sakura taught me that this is the moment when the day's energy begins to transform into night energy, and our bodies naturally become more inclined to organize and finish cycles. At that moment, I perform what I call the sunset ritual. Instead of starting by putting objects away or cleaning surfaces, I begin with the corners. The corners of the walls, the corners of the furniture, the corners of the rugs. According to Japanese philosophy, it is in the corners that negative energy accumulates first, and it is from there that disorder spreads to the rest of the space. I use a special broom made of natural fibers, it can even be made of piakava, and make infinity symbol, shaped movements in each corner, for only 15 seconds. It may sound silly, but the result is impressive. The dust that would normally accumulate over days is contained in these corners and is easily removed in seconds. But the most revolutionary aspect I learned from Sakura has nothing to do with physical cleaning. It is the concept of breathing spaces, areas intentionally left empty that must exist in every room. At first, I found it strange when she suggested that I keep 20% of every surface completely free, without any objects. For example, on the living room shelf, where every inch was once occupied by picture frames and knickknacks, I now keep an empty space the size of a shoebox. On the kitchen counter, an area equivalent to an A4 sheet, always clean and unoccupied. Even in the drawers, I keep a little empty corner. These breathing spaces work as escape valves for the natural accumulation of everyday items. When I come home with groceries, instead of piling everything on the kitchen counter, I use these spaces as transition points. Objects never stay there for more than 24 hours. It is a rule I have learned to respect almost religiously. Another fascinating concept is the inverted drawer method. Instead of organizing drawers in the traditional way, with the items we use most at the front, Sakura taught me to do the opposite. The most used items go at the back, and the least used at the front. It may seem counterproductive, but it has a brilliant logic. Every time we need to retrieve something, we are forced to see everything in the drawer, preventing objects from being forgotten and accumulated. One of the greatest revelations was understanding that mess is not just physical. It has a strong emotional component. Sakura introduced me to the concept of anchor objects. In every room, we should have a single object that evokes positive memories and connects us with the purpose of that space. In my case, in the kitchen it is a wooden spoon that belonged to my grandmother, in my study it is a stone I brought back from a special trip. These anchor objects serve as focal points that naturally inspire us to keep the surrounding environment organized. It is impressive how this works on a subconscious level. My husband, who had always been disorganized with his papers, began to keep his work desk immaculate after I placed a small wooden boat there that he built with our son. A practice that revolutionized my routine was the 3 questions ritual. Before putting away any object, I ask 3 simple questions. When was the last time I used this? Where will this object be most useful? And what is the real likelihood that I will need this in the next 30 days? If I can't answer any of these questions clearly, the object goes into a special box I call limbo. The limbo is kept high in the hallway closet, and it has one unique rule: it can only be opened after 90 days. It is amazing how, after that period, we realize that 90% of the things stored there are not really needed. But the most interesting part is that we don't create that anxiety of throwing away something we might need, because we know exactly where it is. I also learned about the cycle of the 5 senses in organization. Every space should please not only the eye but all the senses. Therefore, besides visual organization, I take care of the sounds. I use a small bell at specific moments of the day, the aromas, different for each room, the textures, alternating between smooth and rough surfaces, and even the taste. I keep a small jar of ginger candies in the living room, a Japanese tradition for guests. One of the most intriguing practices I learned from Sakura is this seasonal rotation method. With every change of season, we hold a small family ceremony where we swap out some of the decorative elements in the house. It is nothing elaborate or expensive. Sometimes it is just changing the color of the cushion covers or rearranging the artificial flowers at the entrance. The fascinating thing is how this simple change affects our perception of space. Rooms that once seemed monotonous gain new life. I discovered that this not only keeps the house visually more interesting, but also motivates us to keep everything more organized. It is as if every 3 months we have a mini renovation that re-energizes us. Another revolutionary concept is the continuous flow principle. Sakura taught me that objects should not remain stagnant, they need to circulate. Therefore, we have adopted the practice of, every month, choosing 5 items from each room to donate or exchange with friends. At first, I thought we would soon have nothing left, but the reality was surprising. Our house became more spacious and welcoming, and there is always room for new memories and experiences. One technique I love is the hidden treasure map. In every room, we create a small hiding place. It can be a false drawer, a secret compartment at the back of the wardrobe, or even a box camouflaged as a book on the shelf. In these places, we store small keepsakes or special objects that we don't use on a daily basis but that have sentimental value. This practice has 2 incredible benefits. First, it frees up space in the main areas, since the sentimental clutter is safely tucked away. Second, it creates a sense of mystery and fun in the house. Sometimes, on rainy days, we have a family treasure hunt, rediscovering these hidden memories. It is a wonderful way to keep the house organized without losing the emotional connection to our belongings. The traveling object ritual is another practice we have adopted. Every month, we choose a decorative object and make it travel throughout the house. For example, a vase that normally stays in the living room may spend a month on the balcony, then in the study, and so on. This not only renews the environments, but also makes us look at objects with fresh eyes, appreciating details that had previously gone unnoticed. One of the most valuable lessons I learned is the concept of transition spaces. These are small areas between rooms that serve as mental reset points. In the hallway between the living room and the bedrooms, for example, I placed a small mirror and a little plant. Every time we pass by, it is a subtle reminder to leave the energy of the previous environment behind and prepare for the next one. This has a powerful psychological effect. I noticed that my children, when passing through this portal, naturally leave the hustle and bustle of the living room behind and enter their bedrooms with a calmer energy. It is as if every space in the house has its own identity, and these transition points help us respect and maintain the specific energy of each environment. The hidden color system is another technique I adopted that works wonders for organization. Each family member has an assigned color, but not in an obvious way. For example, my husband's towels have a small blue embroidery in the corner, mine have a green dot. The hangers for the children's clothes have a colored sticker underneath, invisible when the clothes are hanging. This hidden color system creates intuitive organization without making the house look like a daycare center. Everyone knows exactly where their things should go, and it becomes much easier to identify when something is out of place. The most interesting part is that this created a sense of responsibility in everyone. Even my youngest son, who is 7 years old, now puts his things away without needing to be reminded. A practice that I adopted and that made a surprising difference is the organizational silence minute. Every day, at exactly 8 p.m., we ring a soft bell, the one I mentioned earlier. At that moment, everyone in the house stops what they are doing for exactly 1 minute and organizes what is around them. It could be putting a cup in the sink, folding a throw on the sofa, or simply aligning the objects on the table. It is amazing how this single minute prevents the buildup of clutter throughout the week. Furthermore, it has become a moment of mindfulness for the whole family. A small ritual that helps us reconnect with our space and with each other. Another fascinating concept I learned is that of guardian objects. At every entrance of the house, whether it is the front door, the back door, or even the garage entrance, we place a special object that serves as a symbolic guardian of the space. It can be a small statue, a plant, or even a pretty stone. The idea is that, upon entering the house, we briefly touch this object as a gesture of respect for the space we are entering. It is amazing how this simple act makes us more aware of the domestic environment and predisposes us to keep order. My husband, who used to throw his keys and wallet anywhere, now has the habit of properly storing them after touching our guardian. A small wooden sculpture at the entrance. The growing drawer method is another technique that revolutionized our organization. Instead of having drawers filled to the brim, we keep each drawer only 80% full. The empty space remains at the front, creating a sort of crescent. This not only makes it easier to see the contents, but also creates space to temporarily place items when we are in a hurry, preventing them from being dropped anywhere. A practice I loved adopting was the object gratitude ritual. It may seem strange to thank inanimate objects, but the philosophy behind it is profound. Before discarding any object, whether by donating or throwing it away, we take a moment to thank it for the service it provided. This not only makes us more aware of our possessions, but also facilitates the process of letting go of things that are no longer useful. Finally, one of the most valuable lessons I learned is the concept of growth spaces. In every room, we leave a small space. It can be an empty shelf or an unoccupied corner, intended for something new that we want to attract into our lives. In my study, for example, I have an empty shelf waiting for the books I want to write one day. In the living room, there is a space on the wall reserved for photos of trips we have yet to take. These growth spaces not only keep the house organized by preventing excessive accumulation, but also serve as constant reminders of our dreams and aspirations. It is a powerful way to use physical space to nurture our personal and family growth. Implementing these practices was not easy at first. There was resistance, especially from my husband and my teenage children. But gradually, as everyone began to feel the benefits of a more harmonious and organized home, the method became a natural part of our lives. The most surprising thing is how these organizational practices transcended the walls of our house. I noticed that I began to apply these principles in my professional life, in time management, and even in personal relationships. The clarity and flow we achieved at home extended to other aspects of our lives. Today, when I look at my home, I see much more than an organized space. I see a reflection of who we have become as a family. More aware, more present, more connected with our environment and with each other. And all of this began with just 10 minutes a day and the wisdom of a culture that deeply understands the relationship between space, objects, and well-being. Who would have thought that a simple visit to my daughter-in-law's home in Tokyo would so profoundly change the way I live and see the world?